Today I want to share a couple of words on some of my principles of personal mastery. And this lesson is going to be a little bit philosophical, a little bit esoteric, so just be aware of that. I know that some of you guys are fans and students of Walter Russell's work, so I'm going to be sort of addressing this very loosely, but you guys have seen my soul chart before, and I've drawn this many times. I've said that at the level of your soul, you have a vibration that is so rapid that it appears to be not vibrating at all, but anything at a lower vibration than the soul, i.e. the mind, you're going to have polarities. You'll have a positive and a negative polarity. You'll have a split mind. Now, some of you guys have seen me do my overlay of the noospheres, which is a word that comes from nous, which means mind. These are your spheres of mind. And throughout society, we have spheres of, so that you know, this is called going down and out in life. And this is where the slow fuckers hang out. And they're very polarized. They have a great amount of charge because they have the most judgment. And up here, you have a higher vibration. We call these the high vibe people. He's a high vibe motherfucker. And when I'm talking about the judgment, I'm talking about how reactive someone is to the stimulus in their environment. Things like cheaters and bullies and war and challenge. And many people, God, this is awful. And what's happening here is terrible. And what's happening in the news and the government and in the Middle East, it's so terrible. And people who have these kinds of judgments are going to struggle climbing the socioeconomic ladder. So understand this. You are going to have a conservation of challenge and war and violence and cheaters and competition and threat throughout every dynamic in your life, in your family, in your mind, in your relationships, in your business, in your social groups. You're going to have it there. And it'll show up in different forms at different times, but it will be there. And if you judge it, you can't manage it. And if you can't manage the paradoxes in life and the challenges, you won't rise up. So I want to share something that I've just sort of picked up. And I've talked about before that there is a straight line path here. And when you're right in the middle, you're balanced between the charges, between the polarities. You have a net zero charge. And by the way, your charges are your ions. An ion is a charged particle in chemistry. And so these are your ions. And so when you're right here in the middle, you're poised. You're not poisoned by elating the ion or depressing the ion. Because as soon as you have a judgment here by perceiving a positive without a negative or a negative without a positive, you pull out of the poise, you go into poison. You pull out of the ease and you go into dis-ease. And so I really love Walter's diagram of the staff of Hermes. And you guys have probably seen this even in mainstream medical, the doctors, the hospitals, even on our ambulances, we have this diagram. And I loved his wording. And he says here, ordinary humanity, the masses, pursues the spiral path, but the initiate goes the straight and narrow way that leads to God. What he's saying is here, this is the spiral path. This is the passions passing between the ions and chasing a pleasure and trying to avoid a pain, but then being hit with the pain, blindsided by it. And they spiral up. And there is an evolution, and I'm sure that you would agree by the time that you're 60, even the masses are generally a little bit more wiser when they're 60 than they were when they were 15. But there is a faster way to develop wisdom and mastery. And that is, of course, to take the straight and narrow path by dampening your volatilities and seeing that when you're elated, there's a drawback. And there's a price to pay for whatever you're elated about. And when you're depressed, there's a benefit. And to balance the good, the bad, the happy, and the sad, and see that they're entangled, is the straight path. Now, I've been sharing this for 3 or 4 years since I started to learn it. And many of you have already heard me yapping on about this for days. But what is kind of new to me, actually, and something that I've learned literally in the last 3 days, and I thought was very inspiring, and I thought that I wanted to share it today, is also how this applies on differing scales of existence as well, including the elements. And so this is what I have been learning and reading about. Let me show you. Because remember here, by the way, I said that this is the light. This is the light of your soul. And this is the matter. This is the mass and the matter. This is where the masses live. And this is where you have the most baggage, they call it, because things matter and you've seen the light. And guess what? Same thing for the elements. So I love Russell's diagram here of the elements. He's got the entire periodic table listed out on a diagram here as a function of the resonant frequency and octaves of the elements themselves. Now, what is most interesting to point out is that the lightest elements are at the top, hydrogen and helium, and the heaviest elements, the densest elements, the elements with the most matter are down the bottom. We have the light at the top, the mass at the bottom. Secondly, the elements with the most charge and the most polarity pull out from the middle. And these are the most reactive elements and unstable elements. Just like in the human experience, the more charged you are, the more reactive you are. And thirdly, this diagram demonstrates that the elements that have a net zero charge, that have taken the straight and narrow path, are called the rare noble gases. And they are unreactive, highly stable, highly rare noble gases. And so in the human experience, this is the masters. The rare noble masters who are unreactive and uncharged and centered and on the straight and narrow. So anyway, I just really wanted to share that, one of my findings and something that I was inspired by. I hope that you enjoy this kind of thing. I know that it's very philosophical. So what you want to do is take it on board, but then run it past your own experience and try it on. And see if you can notice the wording that people use and the judgments and things like, God, that's so disgusting and he's so bad and evil. And try to note the people who judge the most, where they're at with their lives. Or perhaps even more accurately, try to take notice of how reactive people are and how easy is it to push them off center. And how easy is it to get them excited and infatuated and elated by something and get them to do stupid shit because they got dopamine surging through the veins very easily. If you look really closely, you'll find that these people have the highest highs and the lowest lows, and they'll be very volatile fuckers throughout their life. But the people who are very poised and centered and calculated and methodical and inspired, but methodical, they will rise to the top quick.